welcome back to my channel. Today on Tuesday Trend Reviews, we're gonna be making two different versions of pizza with cottage cheese. Now, cottage cheese is blowing up all over the internet. Everyone is all about cottage cheese. I absolutely love cottage cheese. And I saw on the internet people do a cottage cheese pizza bowl and then using cottage cheese as the crust for a pizza. So I wanna try out those two things today. The first thing we're gonna do is we're gonna be working on the pizza crust. Now, in my description below, I'll include all the instructions on baking, so no need to keep track of what temperature I use for what. I'll include everything down below, so don't worry about that. We're gonna be doing the cottage cheese pizza crust with cottage cheese and egg. Now, I've done a tortilla with cottage cheese before where I just used cottage cheese, and that was my preference because it was small, but I'm a little bit worried about it falling apart when it's much larger without having egg or something in it. So I'm gonna be using an egg for this. Now, I have not tried making the crust with an egg, which is why this is gonna be a review, because I wanna see how the consistency holds up versus when I made it without any egg or anything and it was just the cottage cheese. Now, the cottage cheese I'm gonna be using is the one by Good Culture. I'm not sponsored by them, but they're my favorite. I think the taste is the best and I think the quality is the highest. Now, I'm gonna be using the whole milk organic one. You can use whichever cottage cheese is your preference. You can use the low fat, you can use non-organic, different company. But I think this one has the lowest level of like liquid too. I sometimes find that when you buy cottage cheese, the curd is too large. There's too much liquid in it, and so that's why I like this brand the most. Now, I'm gonna be using about half of this container, and I'm gonna throw it into a food processor. Now, with my tortilla recipe, I didn't throw it into a food processor because it was small and it held up perfectly well. But like I said again, with it being larger, I just worry that it's gonna fall apart or it's gonna get too crumbly. And we're gonna be making a pizza. I'm gonna have toppings on this. So I don't want the toppings to just break through the crust. All right, so I've added my cottage cheese to my food processor. This is about probably a cup and a half. And next I'm gonna add one egg. This is one large egg. I'm also gonna add some black pepper and Italian seasoning. This is all based on taste, so just do whatever your preference is. I'm gonna pop on our top for the food processor and turn it on and blend it. Let's take a look. That is perfect consistency. I don't want it to be too watery, so I don't want to add another egg. Although I've seen people use different ratios for this, more egg, less egg. I think one egg is good enough. My oven is preheated to 350 degrees Fahrenheit. I'm gonna spray a sheet pan tray here with some avocado oil spray and lay down some parchment paper. Now, you don't have to use a spray, but I think this spray just helps the parchment paper stick to the sheet pan itself, and it makes it a lot easier to work with. Taking our cottage cheese mixture here, I'm just gonna pour this out on our tray. And I'm using a spatula to just mop up everything in here to get it all out. And now let's spread this on the tray. I don't want it to be a super thin layer, but I do want it to be spread out. I don't want it to be like a really thick crust. When you bake this, it will not expand more. It will be exactly the shape that you make it. So just keep that in mind. Make it whatever shape you want. Make it into a square, a circle, whatever you want. This is really similar to the recipe that people use when they do like a cottage cheese wrap. So if you wanna make this into a wrap, you can also use the same exact recipe that you're seeing me make right now. When you spread out your cottage cheese mixture, it's gonna look like this, and I'm gonna throw this into the oven for 30 minutes to bake. I want my crust to cook first before I put any toppings on it, because I want to make sure that the crust is completely done so that all of my toppings perfectly sit on top of it. My crust is finished, so it baked at 350 Fahrenheit for 30 minutes. It looks really, really good. I'm impressed with this crust already. As you can see, it has a really nice texture. I lifted it off of the parchment paper before putting on my toppings, just to make sure that it's not completely stuck to it before I put everything on and cut into it. So lift it off of the parchment paper, and now I'm gonna assemble with my toppings. I'm gonna put on some pizza sauce, and you wanna make sure you're using a low sugar, or I should say no sugar added, low carb marinara or pizza sauce, because we're trying to keep this as low carb as possible, high protein, low in calorie. And that's the best way to do it, especially if you're on a keto diet or you're just trying to stay low in carb, stick to your macros. Make sure that you're checking the labels to make sure that there's not a lot of carbs in the sauce that you're buying. That looks good. I'm gonna take some Parmesan cheese. This is freshly grated Parmesan. And I'm gonna do a thin layer here. Now this is just what I want to put as my toppings. You can do whatever kind of toppings you want. I'm also going to put some freshly shredded mozzarella. I don't like to use the one that's pre-shredded because it has like this potato starch on it on the outside, or tapioca starch, so that it doesn't cake. And you want to try to avoid that as much as possible. So that's why I like to shred it myself. But if you want to use that, go ahead and do that. Whatever is your preference is what you want to use for your pizza toppings. All right, that looks good. I'm now gonna take my fresh oregano and I'm gonna just sprinkle it on top. We're gonna do some slices of pepperoni. Add one more right there. And I'm gonna add some bell pepper. Again, these are just my preferences on toppings for this pizza. Use whatever your toppings are your favorite. All of my toppings are on. Let's throw this into the oven. I've raised the temperature to 400 degrees Fahrenheit, and all these toppings are already cooked. I just want them to heat up really nicely and melt perfectly. So I'm gonna cook it for about 10 minutes just to make sure that all of my toppings are nice and toasted. Let's start working on the cottage cheese pizza bowl. Now the cottage cheese pizza bowl is something that's like a little bit easier. It's a little bit like lazier, and if you just don't really feel like making the crust and you just want something that's really quick and simple, this is perfect for that. You can also use this as a dip, and it's really delicious with some like tortilla chips. I use like low carb tortillas that I make into tortilla chips. It's super, super delicious. And so what we're gonna do is, you want a ceramic dish, you want a oven safe dish, and I'm gonna spray some avocado oil spray in the dish. Just coat the sides, you don't need too much. Now first we're gonna add our cottage cheese. And it really doesn't matter if you use low fat or whole milk cottage cheese. For this one, I'm just gonna be using the low fat one, but you can use the whole milk. It really doesn't make a difference. It bakes exactly the same. It tastes pretty much the same, and it's delicious either way. So whatever is your preference is what you wanna use. I'm gonna be adding my cottage cheese. Again, there is no like real measurement for this. It's just however much you plan on making. What matters is the layers and the flavor. To the cottage cheese, we're gonna add a little bit of garlic powder, just a bit to the bottom. Some black pepper. Again, this is all preference. You don't have to add any of these seasonings if you don't want. I just wanna add these seasonings to this one. And that's some Italian seasoning as well that I just added at the end. Now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna add some low sugar, low carb marinara sauce. This one is from Wegmans. It's just their Amore pizza sauce, and it's really low in sugar and low in carb, but you can use whichever one you want. I've used a couple different ones on my channel before, so it's really just based on your preference. And I'm gonna add a thin layer on top of the cottage cheese. That's good. And then I'm gonna be adding some freshly grated Parmesan, some fresh mozzarella. And this is kind of just like a layer it however you want type of deal. There's really no right or wrong way to do this. It's all gonna melt together. It's all gonna be super delicious. So it's based on your preference entirely. Now on top of my Parmesan and mozzarella, here's where you just play with whatever toppings you want. I have some fresh oregano. I grow oregano in my garden, and so I wanna add a little bit to this middle layer just for some extra flavor. Just a little bit like that. And now we're gonna repeat this process again. So I'm gonna put a little bit more cottage cheese in, and then some shredded cheese, the marinara sauce, and my end toppings on the very top. Do another layer of the cottage cheese. This is low in carb, high in protein, low in calorie, keto friendly, paleo friendly, everyone friendly. This is kind of like whatever you want it to be, and it's super fun and easy to make. And most importantly, it's just delicious and a great snack or a great full meal. This is like one of my favorite things to make because I love pizza, but sometimes I just don't feel like making a whole pizza. And so this just makes it really, really easy for that. Now, again, we're gonna skip the garlic powder because I don't want this to be too much of a garlicky flavor. So to this layer, I'm just gonna add a little bit of black pepper and a little bit of the Italian seasoning again. If you're a garlic fan, you can add more garlic powder. I do usually love garlic, but I don't really feel like adding too much. Just for today, I don't feel like adding too much of it. Next, I'm gonna add my marinara sauce. And again, like I said before, there is no right or wrong measurement for this. It's however much you want, however, you can make this in a really large dish too. Regardless, it's going to cook exactly the same. The great thing with this pizza is this is not like a pizza, but this like pizza dip dish thing is, you can, like I said, make whatever toppings you want. Everything is cooked. All these ingredients are cooked that we're putting in here. So when you're throwing it in the oven, that's why I say it doesn't really matter how large you make this, because we're just heating all this up. We're letting it melt together. We're letting these flavors melt together, and that's the most important piece for this. Now, again, on top of my sauce, I'm adding some Parmesan. I'm gonna add a little bit more to this one. I'm gonna coat this whole thing in Parmesan. Gonna add my mozzarella, and now I'm gonna cover this top entirely in the mozzarella because I won't be layering anymore. And I like cheese a lot, so I want a nice thick layer of cheese. And the reason you wanna use mozzarella and low moisture mozzarella is just because it melts a lot better when you're making this kind of dish or just any kind of pizza. I think mozzarella is the best cheese to use. That's, again, my preference. Do whatever you want for this. If you don't want to use mozzarella at all too, you don't have to use mozzarella. Whatever your preference is, that's what you should use. Now, on top of this, I'm gonna add my fresh oregano. I'm gonna add some pepperonis. Just gonna let's replace this one with a little bit of a thicker one. Just gonna add 4 here, just like that. And I wanna add a few freshly cut bell peppers, just like this. I'm gonna throw this into my oven. It's gonna bake for about 15 to 20 minutes at 400 degrees Fahrenheit until everything is nice and melty. I'll see you guys at the very end. These are our 2 cottage cheese pizzas. Over here, I have my cottage cheese pizza crust pizza, and this is our pizza bowl. They look super delicious. I'm already really impressed, and I cannot wait to dig in. I forgot to mention that before I put this in the oven, the pizza bowl, I did put it on a sheet tray with a rack on top. That just makes it a lot easier to take it in and out of the oven, so you're not trying to like balance it on the oven rack. That's just a little tip. You can do that if you want. You don't have to do that. It doesn't really make a difference in terms of baking. It just makes it easier to take it out. I wanna first do a taste test with the cottage cheese crust pizza. I cut out a little slice here. It looks really good. It's holding up really well. I like that it's not falling apart. Can't wait to dig in. Cheers, guys. That is really nice. It's very mild. It doesn't have like a strong flavor. Sometimes, you know, I've made other crusts before. I've done like my classic cheese crust. I've done the chicken crust. I really like how this is mild and it holds up really well. It's, you know, not super crisp, so do keep that in mind. It is more like a flatbread, so like you could, I guess, like fold it and eat it. It's probably more comfortable to eat it like this. But I really, really enjoy the fact that it's not overpowering over the toppings. And I like that it holds up well. I like that it's high in protein and it's low in calorie, low in carb. This is definitely gonna become one of my new favorite ways to make pizza crust if I'm trying to make this as low calorie and low carb as possible. Now this is our pizza bowl. It is our cottage cheese pizza bowl. You can either eat this just like straight with a spoon. You don't have to have anything. But I also made some low carb tortilla chips. I just took the Mission Foods 0 carb tortillas and I put them in the toaster and I made them into chips so you can eat it as a dip. I first want to try this just by itself without any kind of chips or anything like that. Let's break into this. Completely different consistency, obviously, because it is, you know, just the cottage cheese. It's with all our toppings. I wanna make sure I get a good bite here. All right, a little bit of everything. Cheers. That is really good. I kind of might even like that more than the pizza crust. I mean, the pizza crust kind of gives it like a very, I'm eating a pizza type of deal. So you're like expecting it to taste, you know, very like pizza-like with the crust and everything. But I really like the flavor of this better. I think it kind of tastes nicer. Maybe it's because I didn't mix the egg with the cottage cheese to form the crust. But this is really, really good. And to have this as like a dip, you could take some chips, dip into this, enjoy this. Like, I mean, guys, that looks so good. I'm gonna take another bite with my chips. Cheers. It's kind of crazy how I would think that, I mean, cottage cheese has a very distinct flavor, and I would think that it would be really overpowering, but it honestly is so complementary to this. You don't even feel like you're eating something that is low carb and high in protein. I am super impressed. I will 100% be doing this again. I'm gonna give this a 10 out of 10. Maybe I'm a little biased because I love pizza. So for me, if it's pizza related, it's already given a higher score, but this is really, really good. You guys have to try this. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Which one do you like more? Do you like the one that's more like an actual pizza, or do you guys like the pizza bowl better? If you enjoyed this video, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe to my channel. Also hit that notification bell to never miss a tasty upload. Till next time.